Alright guys, this is going to be absolutely insane, and this is a video I've been planning for at least 2 to 3 years, but I'm finally going to do it. This is going to be the long documentary series of my Madden NFL 2009 PSP series, and this is going to be pretty much like how the history of MTWS was, if y'all remember when I did that for MTWS back in 2019 to 2021. This is going to be just one video though, although I do plan on doing a couple other videos to wrap up the series, as this is just so nostalgic just to go back and think of it after finally just finishing the Madden series today on March 13th, 2022. But before I get into it, I want to explain how I got this game, what led me to do the series, and of course I'll definitely talk about the 2008 season, which most of you do not know about, probably anyone, because that's the only Super Bowl that never aired on YouTube and all that. So, let's get into it, shall we? Now, how did I get into Madden 09? Well, it all started back in February of 2009 when we had to go to Best Buy because my dad had to get something electronic crap, and while my parents were looking at what my dad needed to get, I went over to the game section, and of course they had the PSP out to play, and on the PSP was Madden 09. So that was the most recent Madden 2 of my time when I first played it when I was 15. So while I had the opportunity, I did a game as the Dolphins and the Lions, because a month earlier, back in 2008, around Christmas I mean to say, I did a franchise on Madden 04 for the PC where I played the Lions and I built them up and made them to the Super Bowl in my first year, and I played the Dolphins, so I wanted to do that again on here in the recent version, which, funny enough, the Dolphins and the Lions are two of the worst teams in the 2008 version of Madden, which, funny enough, Lions go 0-16, Dolphins actually go to the playoffs. So, I enjoyed it, and even though we were poor and all that from the Great Recession, I was able to still get the game. And I played that game like crazy throughout the rest of 2009 on my PSP. But then we have to go all the way up to the summer of 2015, when I got my hands on PPSSPP, which is an emulator for the PSP, and I got my hands on the Madden 09 ISO for it as well, so I was able to emulate Madden 09. And I decided that summer that I was going to do a Madden 09 franchise where I was going to run all the teams and all that for the entire 30 years. Now, originally what I was going to do is I was going to edit the players as I go on, because you actually can edit the players, but unfortunately you can only edit them by coach points, which is points you get after like doing what the coaches and coordinators want you to do after each game, which you can only use it on one player at a time, and it only gives them 5 points which you can use, which at best can get their overall up by like 3 points, but even that's rare. And it was some reason in the emulator rigged towards like the teams in alphabetical order. Like, I don't think I ever got past the Chiefs on average with the overall, the coach points. So most of the league didn't get any points whatsoever. So yeah, that wasn't very good, and I couldn't edit the players by like a save editor because no matter what I did, nothing would work, sadly. So after screwing around for a little bit, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this series and I'm going to play every single team in every single game. And at first, what I was going to do is I was going to actually play the games and rig it to the team that I think was going to win. I would have them win. Then the big day arrived, September 9th, 2015. The day before the kickoff game between the Steelers and Patriots in real life. I did the first game in the series after an hour getting the franchise all set up. The Redskins at Giants. Now, just like I said, since I thought the Giants were better than the Redskins, I was going to have them win. So, when I played the Giants, I would play them as I normally would. But when I played the Redskins, as I get down to the end zone, I would either, depend on the score, I would either maybe let them go for a touchdown, or if they were going to take the lead, I would either force them to go for a field goal so they stay under the Giants, or just straight up punt it from punting from like the end zone. That way the Redskins don't overscore and win when I wanted the Giants to win. So I did this, and the Giants ended up winning it in quite an offensive shootout. But then the next game was the Bengals at Ravens. Now, the Ravens I thought were the better team, so I was going to have the Ravens win this one. And unfortunately, it was a disaster. Like, no matter what I can do, even though the Bengals had the worst overall offense in the game at 82, the Ravens offense could not do anything against the Bengals defense. Turnovers, sacks, incompletions. No matter how bad the Bengals defense was, no matter how much I rigged it, the Ravens just couldn't do it. And the Bengals ended up winning 20-17. And that got me very, very mad. Because that's not how I wanted it to be. I wanted the Ravens to get it. And then, of course, I didn't know anything about save states yet, so I couldn't just restart. And I couldn't restart the game completely because I found out that I didn't save at all since I started the series. So I was not going to restart 3 to 5 hours of work just because the game I didn't want didn't happen. So after that, I said, screw it. After that, I decided, okay, I will just play all the games, and I'll try to win as either team as best I could. No more rigging. Whatever happens, happens. And that's how I did the series for the next while. So then, after doing all of the Week 1 games, and then all the 1 p.m. games for Week 2, I noticed an unfortunate trend. The games were just taking too long. Because by now, this is at least 20 games I've done, and I've gotten so used to the controls and the stuff on Madden that the games have started to become high scoring. Like, I regularly were having games like getting 30, 40, hell, sometimes even 50 points per each team. Like, it was very easy for games to get into the 30s each, 40s each, and 50s each. So, the games were taking too long and I knew something had to change. So I decided to lower the time from 5 minutes to 4 minutes. And that greatly helped immensely for me when it came to simming the games. Fast forward, it was now March of 2016, and I was still doing the 4 p.m. games of Week 5, and it was during this time that I decided to take a break from the series because I wanted to get ready for World Finals 17, and I wanted to do more stuff. I wanted to focus more on some more Pokemon playthroughs. I wanted to do Vicky 2 stuff. I wanted to do other NFL stuff. I wanted to do a whole bunch of other stuff, and so I decided to take a break from it. Little did I know that break would end up lasting for 3 months. Eventually, by June of 2016, I got back to it, and it still was largely a slugfest to go through it all. And by the time I got to Week 10, the first Thursday night game of the season, the Broncos at Browns, I literally did that game while having lunch after me and my parents voted in the 2016 presidential election. That's how long it took to catch up. And by the time I got to Week 11 for the Thursday night Jets at Patriots game, it was close to Christmas of 2016. So it was like a month it took me to do just 1 week, as you could see. And by the time I finally got to Week 15, I was already in March of 2017. As you see, it's taken a long time to do the series. But June 2017, I finally did it. I finished playing all 256 games, and man, was I so satisfied to finally get them all done. So, with that out of the way, here was how the 2008 season ended. And boy, I think I might in the future do like a video explain how the actual season went about, because this is like the summary of it though. But as you see, the AFC side, the Colts got the #1 seed barely. They almost blew their chance to get it. But the real choke was the Chargers, who were the #2 seed. They had the chance to get the #1 seed, but they blew it the final week. And the Steelers got the 3rd seed barely as they went 9-7. The Patriots, after they went to the Super Bowl last year, 16-0, they fell all the way down to 9-7, but it was enough to get in as the division winner as the 4th seed. The Raiders, after 6 years of not making the playoffs, they made it in at 10-6. And the Texans made the playoffs for the first time ever in their franchise at 10-6. Meanwhile, in the NFC, the defending champion Giants went 13-3, got home field advantage. The Buccaneers, the team that hosted the Super Bowl, collapsed at the end of the year, but it was still enough to go 10-6 to get first round bye. The Rams, out of nowhere, exploded to 10-6 and got the 3rd seed. The Vikings barely won the NFC North as the 4th seed at 8-8. Then you had the Eagles get in as the 5th seed at 11-5. Then the Cowboys wrapped it up as they went 10-6 and just barely snuck into the playoffs. So now I'll summarize how the playoffs themselves went. But anyways, the first playoff game was the Eagles at the Vikings, which funny enough was how which would happen in real life too. The Eagles and Vikings did play in the wild card round. And just like in real life, the Eagles would win at this time, blowing out the Vikings 49-17. And then it would be the Raiders at the Patriots, a rematch from a few weeks earlier where the Patriots beat them. And this game was offensive as hell, and down to the final, I think it was 13 seconds or so left or something like that. It was one more play left. The Raiders were at their 20, and the Patriots were leading, I think it was 45-38. So the Raiders needed a Hail Mary and a touchdown to just tie the game and send it to overtime. Welp, they did that. Yes, a Hail Mary from the 20 yards out, from their 20-yard line. They actually scored a touchdown on that Hail Mary from 80 yards. Yep, they did it and sent the game into overtime. And the Raiders ended up winning it in a stunning upset, 48-45 in OT. Then the next day was the Steelers hosting the Texans, as the Texans made their first playoff appearance, as they had to go up against the team they faced in Week 1 at the Steelers. I can't remember the exact results, but I know for the fact the Steelers still ended up winning it. And then to finally wrap up the wildcard round was the Cowboys at the Rams, another rematch game, as it was a rematch from Week 7. And just like in real life in Week 7, the Rams crushed the Cowboys in that game, and then they crushed them here in the wildcard round to move on to the divisional. So we start off the divisional round where the Steelers were at the Chargers, a rematch from earlier in the year where the Chargers beat the Steelers when they were struggling. And despite their record, the Steelers actually put up a really tough fight in this game. But in the end, the Chargers won. I think it was 26-23 or something like that. It was really, really close. Right after that would be the Buccaneers hosting the Rams. And the Buccaneers, I'm going to talk about this when I do a series on it, but they were in a tailspin at this point. Their 10-6 record was a lie pretty much, as the Rams were on a roll. And their defense really shut down the Buccaneers hard in this game, as the Rams were dominating this game. But the Buccaneers were making this comeback, and on the final few seconds of the game, the Buccaneers were we're near the goal line with a touchdown to, I think, get the win, or at least send it to OT. It was one of the two, but Jeff Garcia threw an interception, once again his third or fourth one, and the Rams held on to win it. Then after that, the next day was the Giants hosting the Eagles, which in real life, the Eagles played the Giants in the divisional round. Now, of course, in real life, the Eagles beat the Giants, but this time around, the game was extremely close, and then it would have had to go into overtime, but the Giants would hold on to win it in the end to make it back to the conference championship. And then it finally wrapped up the divisional round with the Raiders at the Colts, as this game was really weird. The Raiders started off with the ball, and I kid you not, throughout the entire game until the final drive, the Raiders and Colts would go downfield and score a touchdown. The Raiders on every single drive scored a touchdown, and same goes for the Colts. So going into the fourth quarter, the Colts had the ball, and they were trailing 42-35 as they were marching downfield to send the game into overtime. However, as they got down to the red zone, the Colts stalled on 4th and 7, and they couldn't convert it, allowing the Raiders to hold on and get the win, as the Colts once again went one and done in the playoffs. And after this loss to the Colts and then of course the Buccaneers lost too, but the Colts lost in particular, I was getting pissed off with how the playoffs were going. It was not how I wanted the conference championships to be. Raiders at Chargers, Rams at Giants. So I actually took a 1-month break away from this series before I came back to it. So, a month later in July of 2017, I finally came back to the series. So I did the conference championship. The Rams at the Giants. A rematch from Week 2 earlier in the year when it was an offensive shootout and the Giants held on to win it. This game would be another offensive shootout. The Rams would put up a big fight, but the Giants kept it close, and going into the final minute, the Giants were leading. I think it was 50-43. It was really high scoring, and the Rams needed a touchdown to tie it, and they did it on a Hail Mary pass, just like the Raiders did earlier against the Patriots, to tie it up, send it to overtime. And the Giants, I believe, got the ball, but they stalled, so they gave the ball back to the Rams, and on like one play they did a Hail Mary play that got them right down to like I think the 3-yard line. So then the Rams went for the field goal and it was good. The Rams won it 53-50, and they were in the Super Bowl for the first time since 2001. Meanwhile, in the AFC Championship, it was the Raiders at the Chargers. Now, the Chargers swept the Raiders this year, and it looked like the Chargers were going to make it, as they had all the momentum on their side, even with their struggles. But no, the Raiders completely spanked the Chargers, and at one point, they were up 28-6, as the Chargers could not get anything going, and they could not stop Jamarcus Russell. It also didn't help with, this game had like 30-mile-an-hour winds, so no field goals were possible, and punts were like really bad. Like the wind really fucked up the Chargers badly. But despite all that adversity, with the game winding down, the Chargers actually pulled off the miracle comeback to tie it up at 28 each with just 30-something seconds left for the Raiders to do something. And on their first play, with all the wind, the Raiders decided to go for a Hail Mary, and they caught it deep in the 30-yard line or something close to that. So, with time running out, the Raiders decided to go for the field goal in the wind, and it was good. The Raiders held on to beat the Chargers and were in the Super Bowl for the first time since 2002. And that is Super Bowl 43 for the 2008 season, the only Super Bowl that was never filmed for YouTube. Now, I was not happy with this Super Bowl matchup, as bad enough as it pissed me off with the Buccaneers, especially the Colts not making the divisional round. I wanted Giants-Chargers Super Bowl. That would have been so cool, but I just didn't get it, so I had to deal with this. Two of the worst teams in the game actually made it to the Super Bowl, the Rams and the Raiders. Now, I remember exactly how this game went out, so I can tell you all exactly what happened. So, the first half, the game went back and forth, but the Raiders were definitely in control, and going into halftime, the Raiders were leading 17-14. And then the Rams started off the second half, and then Mark Bulger, their quarterback, suffered a game-ending injury. So nothing was going right for the Rams. They were down, and their quarterback was out. So now they had to rely on, funny enough, Trent Green, who was the backup for the Rams, who, remember, was originally supposed to be the quarterback to lead them to the Super Bowl back in 1999 before he got injured and Kurt Warner took over. He had to take over now as the backup. And boy, when that happened, the game completely changed as the Rams exploded. They could not be stopped offensively, and the Raiders and Jamarcus Russell, for the first time that year, were largely completely shut down. And all of a sudden, the Rams scored I think it was 30-something unanswered points or something like that, and the Rams were up 49-17 before the Raiders scored a mercy touchdown to wrap up the Super Bowl, with the Rams winning it 49-24 and clinching their first Super Bowl since 1999 and their fourth title overall. And that's how Super Bowl 43 ended up. Not with the Steelers making this huge comeback against the Cardinals, but with the Rams crushing the Raiders despite their adversity in this game. So, after all that, the 2008 season was finally over. And to show you how long this took, I started this on September 9th, 2015. I did not finish filming simming the Super Bowl until July 2017. It took 22 months, or 1 year and 10 months to play every single game of the 2008 season, including the playoffs. Now, of course, as I mentioned already, I had 4 months off on this series, so I could have shaved off a few months on it, but it would still been like a year and a half to play all the games on it. That is just way too long, but I was just very happy to finally be over with it. So then, I spent the rest of July of 2017 getting all the teams set up, and this, for some reason, took the longest time to do. Despite all the free agency, the draft, and all that normally being quick later on, it took the rest of the month to get it all figured out, sorted out and all that. But finally, the 2009 season had arrived, as I began in August of 2017. So as I began it, unfortunately, the game was slugging out even more. It was now June of 2018, and I was still doing week 4 games. Think about that, guys. I've now done it 9 months, and I was still not even a quarter of the way through the season. Now, of course, I was busy with a whole bunch of other stuff, and didn't have as much interest in it. But it really boiled down to is it just took too long to play the games. Like, it was back up now where it was taking well over an hour to play each game under 4-minute quarters. And I decided that I needed to lower it down to 3 minutes. But I was worried that if I did that, the offensive stats would be heavily deflated. Like, quarterbacks not getting a lot of yards, especially running backs probably not getting a lot of yards either. But I had no choice. I went down from 4 minutes to 3 minutes just to see how it handled. And largely the quarterbacks were still putting up good numbers. Running backs were not putting up as good numbers, but they were still getting like 1,000+ yard seasons, the best of them. They were still putting up good numbers. But they weren't making like the gargantuan numbers they did like the last season when I had 5 and 4 minute quarters, but they're still putting up good numbers. And I finally cut down the quarters, on time from like high end like 40 minutes to low end barely like 30 minutes, and that really did help. And with the time being cut, I was able to really get motivated, despite the fact that I was doing my Madden 09 Vikings franchise for the rest of the summer of 2018. I really got motivated to get back into the 2009 season, and by January 2019, I finished it. And this is how the 2009 season ended up, as I don't know if I covered it on the YouTube video, but this is how it ended up. In the AFC side, the Steelers got the number 1 seed despite Big Ben missing the final 6 games with injury. The Colts went 13-3 but lost out due to tiebreaker, as they went 13-3 but got the 2nd seed. The Patriots improved to 12-4, but they were stuck as the 3rd seed. The Chargers struggled all year as they went 10-6 and had to fall down to the 4th seed. The Bengals had a really weird, interesting year where they had a strong start, but they kept losing a lot of games near the end of the year. They were 7-6 and looking like maybe they weren't going to make the playoffs, but they eventually did as they went 10-6 to make it in. And the Raiders struggled pretty much all year, but there was enough to go 9-7 and just make it in to the playoffs again. Meanwhile, on the NFC side, the Rams, as the defending champions, ran it hard to go 14-2, the best record in the league, the best record of me playing each game too. 14-2 home field advantage, as the Eagles just barely got the number 2 seed at 10-6. They struggled the beginning part of the year, but thankfully for them, the NFC was so weak this year that they were able to get home first round bye with the 10-6 record. The Vikings moved up to the 3rd seed as they went 9-7. The Buccaneers had a terrible year. They were 2-8 at one point, but then they won their final 6 games to sneak into the playoffs and clinch the division once again at 8-8. The Giants had a strong start to the year. They were 9-2 and challenging the Rams for the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. But then the team completely fell apart and lost their final 5 games to finish 9-7 as the 5th seed. And the Falcons, after going 5-11 last year, they had a solid season, staying around 500 for much of the year, and they went 8-8, and it was enough to sneak into the playoffs with all those tiebreakers in the NFC side. So the playoffs began with the wild card as the Bengals were at the Chargers, as this was a pretty defensive game, and I believe it was a rematch, but I can't remember who won it though. But I know for a fact in the wild card round, the Bengals would hold on to win and beat the Chargers as they continued to struggle. Then it would be an interesting one as the Giants at the Buccaneers. The Giants, of course, lost 5 in a row. The Buccaneers won 6 in a row, or 5 in a row, whatever it was. But the Giants got their shit right, and they demolished the Buccaneers to move on. So then it would be the Falcons at the Vikings, and the Falcons would put up a good game against the Vikings, but the Vikings would pull off the win in the end, and I think it was in overtime too, as they had to pull off a comeback to get that one. And then the wild card wrapped up with a rematch from the wild card last year as the Raiders were once again at the Patriots. This time around, it was a defensive slugfest as Jamarcus Russell and Brady really couldn't get anything going. But in the end, the Patriots would hold on and win it and get revenge from last year. Then it was the divisional round as the Giants had to go to the Rams, a rematch from the conference championship last year, and they played each other early in the year, and I know the Rams lost it because I know the Rams' 2 losses were to the Colts and the Vikings, and the Giants spanked the Rams up 21-10 at one point, and the Rams just couldn't get anything going. Their elite offense just got curb stomped as the Giants got the revenge, and they beat the Rams to dethrone the defending champions. And then, of course, after that was the Patriots at the Colts, a rematch from earlier in the year where the Colts beat the Patriots, if I remember correctly, in Foxborough, so they had to go down to Indianapolis. And this game went back and forth, but in the end, the Colts would hold on to win it to finally not go one and done as they made the conference championship for the first time since 2006. The next day would be the Bengals at the Steelers, as both teams, I think, split it in 2009, but unfortunately, of course, remember for the Steelers, they didn't have Big Ben. They had to rely on Charlie Batch, who did play good as the backup, but unfortunately for this game, he really was his normal average self, and that's not what the Steelers needed. They needed Big Ben, but he wasn't there as the Steelers struggled, and the Bengals would beat the Steelers, although not really an upset since it wasn't that much of expectation for Steelers once Big Ben went down, as both number 1 seeds went down as the Bengals made to the AFC Championship for the first time since 1988. And the final divisional round game would be the Vikings at the Eagles, the rematch from the wild card round the previous year. And the Vikings would put up a hard-fought fight against the struggling Eagles, but the Eagles would just hold on to beat the Vikings as they made to the NFC Championship for the first time since 2004. So then, the AFC Championship, the Bengals at the Colts, as this would be a high-scoring affair, but once again, the Colts could not hold off the Bengals as the Bengals pulled off the comeback to get the win, and the Colts could not do anything with the little time they had left as the Bengals made the Super Bowl for the first time since 1988. So then the NFC Championship was the Giants at the Eagles. The rematch from the wild divisional round last year, the Giants were in the NFC Championship for the 3rd year in a row and they had to visit the Eagles as the Giants had the Eagles number all day. The Eagles desperately were doing desperate trick plays, everything in the book that they could think of to pull off the comeback as the Giants just kept having their number. But when it finally mattered the most, McNabb clutched up and the Eagles would get the game-winning touchdown. I think it was 21-17 to make it to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2004. After all their struggles, they actually made the Super Bowl when they had all those expectations and they struggled at the beginning part of the year. And then it was Super Bowl 44, the Eagles and the Bengals, as this would be the first Super Bowl that I would film for YouTube. And what a classic Super Bowl it was, as the Bengals won it. I think it was 44-42 on a last-second touchdown pass to pull off the comeback to win their first title in their 41-year history. As this was a classic Super Bowl. Much better than last year's one, and a good Super Bowl to show on YouTube. So, the 2009 recap, as I started the season in August of 2017, and I ended it in January of 2019. This time, it took 17 months. 1 year and 5 months, but remember, I got deeply involved in it in June of 2018 when I knocked it down to 3-minute quarters, and it only took 7 months afterwards. So if anything, other than that terribly slow start, it didn't really take that long in comparison, just 7 months to do all the rest of the season. Much faster than before. But as you see so far, each season took over a year and a half to be done. 2008 took almost 2 years, 2009 took over a year and a half. But I was very motivated into 2009. After taking 2 months to do the playoffs in 2008, only took a few days to do it all in 2009. In just 2 days, I finished all the off-season stuff for 2009 as I was ready for 2010. So getting into the 2010 season, I quickly played a whole bunch of the first bunch of games, but then I got to the 4 p.m. games where I noticed a terrible problem. For some reason, and as I'm showing this video, in the last season I saved the save state. For some reason, since 2010, I could no longer play the Bengals or the Bills. I mean, not the Bills, the Bengals or Bears. Because for some reason, if I start a game as them, the game will act like I didn't pick any team, and it will just make it be a CPU game. But then if I played the Bengals opponent instead, the game would play normally. But then if I tried to flip over to their opponent, I mean, play the Bengals or Bears, the game would force me back over to the Bills, as you can see right here. I start off the Bills, go to the Bengals, leave, but go back, already back on the Bills. And no matter what, I couldn't fix that. Even going into like total simulation, didn't fix it here. No matter what, I just could not play the Bears or the Bengals. So now, I was in a pickle, as I did not know what to do. What was I going to do? Because I was not going to play all the games but then ignore the Bears and Bengals. No, that's not fair. I gotta do whatever it is equally. So for the next few months, I at first tried to do multiple times where I did total simulation, where I just picked the plays and see how it handles out and all that. And one time I got up to like week 4 or 5, but I just didn't like the results for it. It just felt so BS. It didn't feel like legit, and the players were playing really awful and all that. Like, no, I can't do it anymore. But so eventually I was forced to come to the realization that I'm going to have to go back to how I play Madden normally. I was going to just look at each game, look at like their stats, their injuries and all that, their momentum, home field and all that, and I was going to decide right then and there who's going to win. And that's what I did for the rest of the 2010 season. And finally, so it was April of 2019 when I finally finished simulating the 2010 season. As most of the time it took was just trying to do like the total simulation, not being satisfied with it. It only took like not even a day to really simulate the rest of the season, as I was just stuck trying to figure out what was I going to do. But here was how the 2010 season ended, but I'm pretty sure I showed it when I did my video talking about the outcome of it. So for the Super Bowl, it was the Colts and the Saints, where the Colts dominated the Saints before the Saints tried to make a comeback, but the Colts would end up winning at 31-24 to clinch their first title since 2006. So remember like the last 2 years where 2008 took almost 2 years to simulate, 2009 took a year and a half? This one took just 3 months, with most of that 3 months because I wasn't sure what I was going to do for the season. So it was nice to get a simulation done in just 3 months, if anything just a few days. So then after that, I did the 2011 season, and I immediately went to the Bears and Bengals game to see if I could play them, but nope, wasn't able to play them. And pretty much the rest of the way I just simulated every single season with the occasional blip of checking, hey, can I play the Bears and Bengals? But nope, didn't happen. And because of that, I was forced to not allow the Bengals or Bears to make the Super Bowl. Even though there were many teams of their years where they were good enough to make the Super Bowl, but I was forced to have them lose in the conference championship because I wouldn't be able to play them otherwise. It really hurts that I had to do that, especially since the Bears were not allowed to win a Super Bowl in this series because of it, but I can't do anything about it since the game did that to me. So then soon afterwards, just a month later, I did the 2011 season, as here was the results for it. As in the Super Bowl, the Aaron Rodgers-led Chiefs lost to the Trent Edward-led Panthers, as the Panthers would get the first of their 5 titles in the 2010s to become a dynasty, which I'm very proud of. I might actually do a video on that because I was so proud of that dynasty too. As after that, the season was just simulated the rest of the way, and as you saw, it got much quicker. It took almost 2 years in 2008, then took a year and a half in 2009, 3 months for 2010, and then just a month for 2011. It got down to a much more reasonable time, so I was able to simulate the rest of the way until I finally finished it on March 13th, 2022 as the last Super Bowl. So yeah, that's pretty much how this series ended. It was nice to finally finish and all that. Although, I'm going to be as honest as possible. I honestly didn't really enjoy the series after the early part of 2010, or maybe 2011. Now, I did have a lot of not nostalgia. I did have a lot of enjoyment, like up to like the middle part of the 2020s, because most of the players from the beginning of the series and the players I just drafted when I was really focused on the teams, the first few years were still there, but by that point, late 2020, not late, like mid 2020s, they were finally like all retiring, so now it was all custom players, and I didn't really bother drafting. I just let the game pretty much do it afterwards. Didn't have as much like connections with all the teams pretty much, and of course, most importantly, I couldn't play them anymore since I can't play the Bengals or Bears. But at the same time, it was for the better that happened, because the series probably wouldn't have ended otherwise. Like, even if I did a very quick job with all the seasons, like we saw in 2009 season, it took like 7 months to do like 3/4 of the season in the playoffs. I'm sure it would probably be like, even if at that same speed, I'm sure you had to add like an extra month to do the final, the last 4 weeks. But at this rate, honestly, 3 years later, at best, I probably would be like in 2014, 2015, maybe even the 2016 season if I'm lucky, if I kept doing this. I would still be like in year 7, 8, 9, or 10 of the series instead of being done now. And I look back, I don't really want to do a franchise that's that long. I don't want to do a series ever again of Madden that's 6.5 years to finish. But at the same time, it really isn't that much fun to do if I can't play them. That's where all the nostalgia factor came from, and the enjoyment of building up the teams. But I just don't really know what to do. Like, I can't find that balance of playing all the games, but being quick enough that I can get done like in like a few days or weeks or a month or so. Because I don't play the game religiously every single day, so that's not going to work. So I just don't really know what to do. But I'm just glad that this series is finally over with. And I hope you all enjoyed this series, as I am now going to wrap it up by showing the season stats each year, the regular season standings and the playoff standings. So here is the montage from 2008 to 2037. Enjoy, as I'm still going to do more videos on this about my proud job running the Panthers franchise, Dynasty of the 2010s. I might do some chart videos of everything. Alright, so here it is to wrap up the video.